be foundational to the rest of the implementations and capabilities that we could potentially use in this suite from Microsoft. So that name is really meaningful to us because we know this is just the beginning. So vision and mission. So just a little bit of history in that this project was really seeded through Governor Brown's action plan for Oregon, where she, and I believe used these particular words, user-friendly, reliable, and secure. And she has really tasked EIS with a very specific goal of taking our email, consolidating it, streamlining it across the entire enterprise so that all agencies have a similar platform to use, which not only makes us, sort of have a level playing field as far as our workplace and how we interact with our own agencies, but also extending that collaboration across the enterprise. So being user-friendly, obviously, I think we're all already familiar with a lot of the Microsoft tools, and so extending those capabilities to the additional suite of tools that we have now with Teams especially is really one of the critical components of our vision. And so in order to do that, we're going to enable identity management and enhance security. The suite that we have of Microsoft tools really does come with some enhanced identity and security management tools. And that's one of the reasons that we pretty much have everything that we could want from Microsoft at this point, given our licensing approach. And what has to happen is, this foundational work, and then we can continue to enable those other tools. Obviously, cross-platform and mobile use, we all know that using our mobile devices is important at this time. It seems like I use my mobile device a lot less now that I'm just sitting at home at my computer now, but obviously when we get back, and we're, out and about and around, having more access mobily is going to be important. The cross-agency collaboration I mentioned, a single hub for intelligent communications, so sharing documents. I'm going to talk a little bit more with you about particularly how our project is using the Microsoft tools right now. Remote work via chat channels, video conferencing, and again, just reimagining the way we do work. We all want to come into work or stay home at work and have it be as seamless, modern, innovative as possible. And I think probably a lot of us out there have dealt with legacy tools that are difficult or take a lot of manual work. And so I'm excited to be launching on this project. To that end, as in all projects, and Joe kind of mentioned in my opening, how we show business benefits is really important. And I think, we can run our projects on time and on budget, but if we really don't show measurable business benefits, then, really what have we done? So we try to make sure we have alignment and a strong focus on that. So you're going to see some benefits here with the measurements, things I've already kind of mentioned as I was talking through our mission and vision there. But so providing the same user experience for tools and capabilities, regardless of which executive branch agency you're in. We have had haves and have-nots, to be frank. There are some agencies that are a little behind the times and some that are way out ahead. And so really getting us to more of a level playing field there, I think, is important. Being able to find and work with your colleagues. Not all agencies need to do cross-agency work, but many do, and being able to do that, both being able to find the people you need to find, connect with them, see their calendars, share documents, chat with them. Those are all things that I think we want to be able to do when we want to do it, and to be limited by certain technologies is challenging to get our work done. Access to modern tools to allow agencies to collaborate, that's along the same lines. But the other thing I want to mention there is I just think about my first years with, I'm I'm going to say it was Adobe was probably the first thing that I started trying to use in my meetings with video conferencing and trying to bring in, be it people from the field to provide input or whatever it was. And I just always remember having to come in and be prepared and have everything set up beforehand and tested, because we weren't sure it would really work depending on if we were in a different office or what we were doing. So it's exciting to me, and I've probably already just, taken it for granted that I just log on and Teams works for me every time. And, I think I used to struggle just to even connect to Wi-Fi back in the days. So we have come a long ways, and I do think, you're all probably at different spaces as far as your understanding of what Teams has to offer. But once we get to that place where we all have it and have had the training and the information we need to be able to use it efficiently, it's going to really help. Talked about scheduling meetings, the redundant collaboration tools. That's a kind of a smaller benefit, but still a good one, right? Like some people are still using Zoom. I mentioned Adobe. We've got WebEx. So those are tools we likely won't need when we're done with this. And then we have a lot of agency managed email systems. It's another thing that we're going to be measuring. So as I said, foundations, we're laying the groundwork here. This is our little house. I think a good house metaphor can be used for a lot of things, but so the gray down there at the bottom, that's what we're planning to do by the end of this project. You see some of the basic tools that you should expect over there. Exchange is kind of the behind the scenes email. We've got Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote. The good news is, and this gets a little messy, and I apologize for that, but once we get through this and down the road, the complexity will benefit us. But I think initially, if you're just starting to figure out what it is we're doing here, it can be a little confusing. But Teams really does come with a lot of tools. So for example, you see above the foundational delivery of what this project will do, there's the light blue where it says SharePoint. And so SharePoint is very complicated, and some of you may know that. Some of you may know that supporting SharePoint and creating workflows and all of that in SharePoint takes, you have to have some skill sets and some resources in order to do that. So SharePoint is a little further down on our roadmap, but the good news is with Teams, actually, it comes some of those capabilities that you might typically see in SharePoint, such as, being able to work collaboratively on a document, or see versioning, or revert back to another version, which I have had to do, a few times. So, Teams really is a very powerful tool, and I think as we get into this, the more you can learn about Teams, it's really going to benefit you in your work, especially in project work. I've seen that. And then the global address library, that's probably not something you're going to notice as much. That's something the technical teams typically have to deal with right now, and there's a whole, kind of complexity with the way that we use state.or.us now, and so. Not something I can go too far into, but definitely something that will be cleaned up and modernized here as we move forward. And then on the right, some additional tools there that I also believe you and your agencies may choose to use. Actually, the first one there with the little checkbox and all the people is Planner. I love Planner, and it comes with Teams. It's not something here that you say that that you can see it's on the right hand side, so it's not necessarily supported by EIS, but you can certainly use it, and because it comes packaged with Teams, it just naturally has some capabilities that you're going to use. If there might be other ways that you want to use it that you would have to support, but Planner it's basically the ability to really just work as a team to manage tasks, and it's really powerful. And that I would love to at some point be able to show it to you. I think we have to wait till we get a little further down the road to really get into that, but you can certainly Google it and find out a lot about it. There's also things like forms, which, I think probably a lot of us use SurveyMonkey, and now we would have forms, which is essentially the same type of thing. So, and again, to my point, like anything you can learn on your own if you're interested in, learning more about it, there's stuff out there that you can YouTube or whatnot. So the bottom line, again, that's what will be capable by the end of this project. Above will be the future stuff. So where we have been with this project, so you can start to kind of understand the work that's been done and kind of where we're at right now and then where we're going. You know, obviously after COVID hit, the team pivoted to emergency work. They had actually launched the project late in 2019. We're just starting to get their arms around sort of the approach and the strategy, and then this hit. And so there were 12,000 mailboxes migrated, I think 41 agencies at that point. And we had, you know, really figured out what we were going to do with the licenses, because everyone had their own agreements. They were at different times and different prices and different levels. And so basically the licensing was also figured out so that everybody had the same thing, which was an E5 license, which is higher than what most people had at the time. So again, more capabilities there. Now we're on one enterprise agreement, and every agency will be on this same kind of schedule. And it really gives us more of that enterprise approach to the licensing, which I think is important. We've got the MFA. MFA was big as we moved to work from home. The deployment, training, and delegation of CoreView. CoreView is actually the tool that your email administrators will be using as they go forward in order to do the work that they need to do. We're exploring a very complex visual of roles and responsibilities, because it's, you know, to consolidate licenses is one thing, but to actually have the shared roles and responsibilities around the administration of these tools is a whole other thing. And, you know, Microsoft it's a complicated set of tools that changes daily, pretty much. You know, we're all used to that. We used to get updates a few times a year. Microsoft is updating things daily. So really having the ability to manage that and share those roles and communicate and do all of that is a complex system. We need to make sure, obviously, we can continue e-discovery. That's also something we still allow for the agencies to have capabilities to do, which I know is important to the agencies. We have some MS Teams early adopters that we launched, and then we've got some MS Teams 100 and 200 level training courses, which are still going on. So if you're interested in those, you should try to get into those. But looking up here at the timeline, you know, a lot of people thought because of the work that was done during the emergency work that the project was launched and we were in execution. We were not. And so there was a lot of project planning done through the summer. The team unfortunately lost their project manager. He passed away in the summer, and so another bump in the road for the team. And then I joined in September of this year, and we got through stage gate 2, the implementation planning, really focus on that documentation and processes to make sure we were a fine-tuned machine. At the same time, the team was still supporting the 41 agencies, the 12,000 mailboxes that had migrated, and you know, trying to kind of continue to build that bicycle while we're riding it. We are almost done with that implementation planning, and you know, if we can get stage gate 3 this week, that would be amazing. So, but probably a lot of you that are on IT projects are familiar with the final push, right? So yeah. All right, so just an update on where we're at. Just gave you the kind of update on where we're at with the project planning. We baseline the schedule, which I'm going to go over with you today. So again, you can see where we're headed in the future. We have the M365 Project News, and you see a little picture of it there on the right. If you're not subscribed, please do. It's a Gov delivery thing. We're semi-regular. It's turning out to be every like 3 to 4 weeks that we send out the newsletter. We've started the agency onboarding plan. So onboarding is a term you'll hear us use if you're going to be engaged with the project work at all, because that's really sort of, you know, initial contact with the agency and the beginning of any work that they need to do to the post-migration activities. So we call it onboarding. And then change champion engagement. We should have started OCM, back in January when we would have been starting it had we not had all this emergency work. It's, as Joe said, organizational change management is really important to me. I think it's probably important to a lot of you. Really having that pre-work done can help you understand a lot about where folks are at and how ready everyone is for the changes. We pretty much just had to jump in and start making the changes. So, but still wanted to make sure we have an eye to that. And the other thing that we need to recognize is that there's a number of enterprise projects going on right now. I think I saw Joyce online here today with the payroll project coming out. So we recognize from a DAS EIS perspective that there's enterprise activities that are really going to have to, be kind of merged with whatever you have going on in your agencies and your cultures, your communications, all of that. We want to make sure that we have someone who can be that conduit to getting the right messages out at the right time. And with an enterprise project, it's not like I'm going to be talking to the end user. So having those change champions to really do that for us in the right way, the right approach for each agency is important. And so if you're out there and you are from an agency and you're not sure if you have a change champion, you should find out. And then we have a M365 advisory committee. So again, talking about building the bike while we ride it, you have to have governance with all of these changes coming from Microsoft, because there are some things that just happen to you and they show up one day. There's other things that happen, but you maybe have some choices about how they happen. And then there's others that you can choose. And so how we manage those every day. I logged on the other day and all of a sudden I was getting 5-minute warnings. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. At the end of my meetings, which I think is really nice, but that just showed up. So the ability to really manage those changes has to be done with really rigorous governance. So what we have created is an advisory committee that's made up of agencies of different sizes. We have both business and technical folks here, because this isn't, most of it impacts the business and the way that we use these tools. So combination of business and technical folks from different policy areas, different size agencies, boards, commissions, etc. So really good group. We actually just met today, had a good second meeting, which was great. And they got through some things, talking about whether or not people, when they join as a guest, if they are announced, so I don't know if you've noticed that in Teams, if you've been on a Teams call and that folks get announced. So, little things that we, have choices on. We want to make sure we're vetting with the right group of people. From the advisory committee, just so you know, they actually go then, there's a few levels, which we're going to have to make sure we're managing well. They'll go to the steering committee for now while the project is in flight. And then once the project goes away, the steering committee will go away as a part of the governance. But then it goes to EITGC, and that's Enterprise IT Governance Committee. And they're a committee that's been around for a number of years now. And they are a subset of the enterprise leadership team, which is a group of 30-some directors that really help the direction setting based on Katie Koba and Terrence Woods, who is our CIO, and our Katie is our chief. Why am I not thinking of it right now? Somebody, let's see. Does anyone know? What's that?
Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you. I couldn't get the middle letter for her for some reason. I drew a blank. So Katie Koba, our Chief Operating Officer, Terrence Woods, our Chief Information Officer, and so they co-chair that enterprise leadership team and determine kind of the strategy and direction for the enterprise. And then the Enterprise IT Governance Committee is the in-between layer. So anyhow, it goes through all of those layers. Some of the decisions won't, obviously, like the smaller minor decisions won't, but more major decisions that we know need particular vetting, we'll go through that. Some of the technical activities, our enterprise tenant architecture is complete. I don't know if tenant means much to all of you. It's really just kind of like, your environment, the space that we're in technically. And, it's obviously different when we're talking with an external person than when we're talking with an internal person. It's also different if you're talking to a different agency that's in a different environment. So tenants are an important part of our conversation, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what that means as you start to try to do that cross-agency collaboration. Because we've talked about just having one tenant, one environment. Well, everybody's in it. It's, we're all one big happy family. But, unfortunately, as I mentioned, some agencies were further ahead and they're down the road so far that the amount of work that it would take to actually put us all into one tenant, it doesn't really weigh out. And it's the balance of the amount of work and the value is not really there at this time. Something we'll look at the end of this project. We had an Exchange. So Exchange 2010 is a Microsoft component that had a end of life, and so we had to actually migrate some of those agencies. So that was another part of the sort of execution work we had to do before we were ready. We have one agency left to do in that group, but we did get the rest of them into they're migrated into the Oregon tenant, the Oregon environment. We are engaged now, actually, I think with 4 other agencies since the time I wrote this. We've had 2 other onboarding kickoffs. So we are rolling, and it's the planning that we're doing with them takes a number of weeks. So we are wanting to engage with folks in enough time to make sure that they can schedule what they need to schedule. It's very much a partnership, and that they have tasks to do and we have tasks to do. And so there's a lot of rigor, and thank goodness we have Teams, because all of our tracking tools are in Teams. And we're still using MS Project, right, for kind of our higher level tasks and measuring our kind of health performance of our project. But our day-to-day and letting our technical team be able to get into Teams and check off things as they're complete has been really great. We're not at the point where all the agencies can get in, because obviously we're working with agencies that haven't migrated yet. So unfortunately, we can't see that value quite yet in engaging in this onboarding activity with the agencies. But at least within the project team, we're able to really see some efficiencies there. And then, as I mentioned, the operational support of all the agencies. So there's tickets coming in, there's questions, problems, incidents, all being managed by our strong but powerful team, who I'll talk to you about in a minute. So the project structure, I talked to you about governance related to the MAC. Obviously, the project has a project structure. What's interesting to me, and I don't know necessarily exactly how we've done other enterprise projects. I think that that's probably similar to some extent, but I was used to running a project and having a steering committee made up of folks that were in leadership positions for the impacted units, the business units, right? And then that meant they were empowered and had control over either resources or funding or those types of things. And really, when it comes to our steering committee here, the way that we put them together was really to make sure they were in that governance line for those business decisions. The things I said were coming out of the MAC, the advisory committee there. They do some project oversight and definitely are interested in being informed, and there are certain decisions about the project that they can weigh in on. But they don't have a lot of control over the funding for the project or the resourcing for the project. That really is EIS that has to figure that out. We have had some asks to borrow resources from agencies, because we have some agencies that have some really skilled folks that we would love to borrow. So that has happened, and we appreciate that. But generally, I think you can probably see how that would probably just be a little bit different in this enterprise type of project. Our executive sponsor is Terrence Woods, our state CIO. So it's good to have his input into this project, given his visibility into what the legislature and the governor's office is looking for. Curtis Danka is our Chief Technology Officer. We tend to do a lot of decision making together because there's so much in Microsoft 365 that has an impact on architecture decisions or, IT, considerations that we have to think long-term about. And so even just talking with agencies about things that they want to do or are already doing because they are ahead of the game, and how our CTO and the team he runs called Strategy and Design, how they can say, okay, this is the best way for us to go about our next steps with this particular type of capability or IT component. So I really appreciate having him as my counterpart. And then we've got Michelle Summers, who's great. She's been the enterprise email leader for a number of years, so she has again, my technical guru there, so someone I can turn to and really collaborate a lot with her on everything, as well as the project processes and approach with the project. Bruno is our guy from security, and it's important point of really deciding who you need embedded in your project, right? And those touch points for your different project team members, because I think he wasn't actually a part of the project for a while. We didn't have a security person full-time assigned, and now we do, and that's just made a world of difference. And so that consideration of who you need on your project and connected on those weekly meetings, and really at every agency meeting that we have. So it's great to have Bruno on board. Two great project managers, Andrew Ott and David Solberg. It's been a really fun exercise in making sure all of our project plans have them specifically assigned to certain things, and then backing up each other on certain things. I've had two project managers before, but it's typically like a business project manager and IT project manager. And to some extent, we've done that here as well. But definitely there was some gray area there, and so we've got most of that hammered out now. And then a really great project team, who I will talk to you about here. So we've got three engineers that are really helping with the migrations. We have another engineer that's helping with more of a different area. It's the federation and acquisition of the other tenants. And I don't want to get too technical and lose people, but really that's our main technical team up above there. Brittany Kinnison is our business analyst. She does everything from the communications to the technical documentation. She's really pretty amazing. And then Alex, Jack, and Mark are our main engineers, with Fahan as their lead engineer there. So a small team. Rodney is an architect. He's from Curtis's team, actually. So, and all of these people are really report up to Curtis, except for Sean reports to the data center. But it's really a great team, but they, again, are, holding up the operations as well as, talking with every agency and supporting every agency through these migrations. So, but really feel lucky to work with these folks. And then, like I said, we borrowed a few people, which is great. Herman Davis came to us from, he's a part-time resource from DOR, Brian Chamberlain from DHS OHA, Jill Smith, she's actually in our EIS PMO, but just part-time with us. And then Travis Miller is also in EIS, but we only get a little bit of his time. And he's a really great with communications and strategy and whatnot. So that's the team. All right, so this is a resource. If you're in an agency that's already migrated, this, please take note. We're going to get this PowerPoint presentation out to you after we're done here, but this hub has a lot of great information. And so hopefully you're using it, or if you didn't know about it, you now can go there and figure out, where you can get help with things. This is also where you're going to learn about the changes that are coming, every day. So we we'll have this out there. Obviously, this is a long-term communication portal for us. We just need to get everybody migrated so that they can use it. Again, right now it's just the agencies that we have in the Oregon environment that can use it. Oh, so I went over the advisory committee in pretty good detail earlier. So let me just see if there's anything else here that I want to add. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I mentioned the agency representation. We also have a number of folks from EIS that include security, the enterprise architects, the senior IT portfolio manager, business relationship manager. We also have our chief data officer. So, there's a lot of data considerations and, where we're storing things, how long we're storing things, what we store. So, yeah. So, enterprise architecture, might be a term you're familiar with. If not, really, this is just like how are we planning to approach M365, and there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. And we coming up with where we're at today took us a lot of iterations. So I talked with you about the license standardization. We've got that done. Check. Enterprise tenants. So those are those environments. And so now we have to have now that we've decided who is going to be where, we are going to have conversations about how those tenants then are able to federate and have some of the capabilities that are outlined in our business benefits. We've got the agency onboarding, which I mentioned. That's our process for bringing everybody along. Then at the end of the project, we have that MVP baseline. We have the foundational work done, and everyone is recognizing those business benefits that we outlined. And then beyond that, once the project is done and we're looking forward, how does our Oregon enterprise change? Where do we need to go from there? What do we need to do to take the next step? And at the same time, honestly, by the time this project is over, what is Microsoft now offering that could be a little bit different in the way that they deal with different environments and different tenants and whatnot? So that's kind of our roadmap, at least through the end of this project. And then from there, I think one of the tasks we have is to make sure our roadmap, is clear beyond that. So I mentioned that I wanted you all to be aware of how you're able to engage with the other agencies. Obviously, within your own agency, it'll be, the full level of collaboration. But if there's a tenant, so for example, and I'll show you this list a little later so you know who's where. But for example, DHS OHA will be in their own assigned tenant. So if I am trying to engage with them, then there's some additional considerations for me, right? So there could be an additional MFA registration into that tenant. There's some kind of that back office address book capabilities that we are continuing to require from this other application called Sender, which I'm not going to go into, but if you've heard of it, then the issues there. And if you haven't, don't worry. So in calendaring, I can only really see if Joe is, free, busy. But if it's, someone that's in the Oregon tenant with me, then I potentially could have actually the ability to, schedule things on their calendar. Looking up contacts by name in instant messaging versus using an email, which, I start typing and it knows who I talk to all the time. It pops them up first, and then it, it'll look up other people as I need to in DAS or one of the other agencies in the Oregon environment. Full meeting configuration options. So, a lot of you kind of came in as guests into this meeting, and so how we come into meetings changes a little bit. And then as far as collaboration, if I want to share a document with you, that changes a little bit. So we'll be able to do all the things we need to do to meet our business benefits, but it's not as seamless as we would like it to be. And then that, so that will be the next thing we look at, is how to make it even more seamless beyond that. How do we not take those couple extra steps of having to log in and register into that tenant? All right, so baseline the project schedule. So in addition to kind of telling you where everyone in the state is at as far as this project goes, this is also going to help you know where you're at in which environment. So a couple things for you to take away from this little bit here. And we have gone around the bend about how to have a common language, which I'm sure you all agree, having that common language when you're, starting a project is so important, so that we're all talking about the same things. And so it was brilliant that, Brittany Kinnison came up with these different groups, and now that's how we talk about everything. That's how our schedule is structured. So it's just, it's stuck basically. So group A, those are the folks we moved during the emergency. Also those 2010 agencies I said that we had the end of life issue with, that we've moved. So they are all in that Oregon tenant. Group B, we're also going to be moving into the Oregon tenant, but they're in process. This is our biggest body of work. We've got 16 agencies we need to do this with, and the group A were the easy ones. We could not rip them, but we could do those in a easier fashion, and these we couldn't do necessarily as easily as we did with the others that we were able to move during the emergency. So this is going to take some time and some partnership. Group C, just a few agencies there that had already actually started to move into an M365 tenant. So we've got some tenant-to-tenant work that we need to do, which is just a little more complicated and, a little different process. And then the last group are those agencies who will just kind of stay where they're at, but they'll become a part of the enterprise structure because they'll be acquired and federated with the rest of the state and the other tenants and the Oregon tenant, that has Group A there. So here's all the groups. I'll just give you kind of a minute to look at it. Should be alphabetical, but we got the 53 agencies here. Again, these are the folks that the collaboration should be pretty smooth. The thing is each of these is in a different place as far as their team's enablement. So, why I could talk to everyone in the same way, or have collaboration in the same way. They may not be collaborating that way. They may not have had the training. They may not even be using Teams yet. So we'll be working with this group. We're actually going to have some kickoffs in February with this group, and then open office hours where we can work with them to really get them to where they need to be, because there's some business decisions. Do they turn on Teams completely? Do they pilot it first? Do they just do the chat and the appointments? So there's a few considerations, and each agency is going to want to make those decisions. And then here's the other three groups, Group B, C, and D. As I said, Group B, our biggest group there of agencies, just a handful here. So DOR will be moving into the Oregon tenant. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission will also be moving to the Oregon tenant, and then the HEC will be moving into the Oregon Department of Education tenant. They have special pricing there, and it really just kind of made sense for them to be over there with education. So this is where you're going to want to know, who, if you work with any of these agencies on a regular basis, or the folks in your agencies work with these other teams, or you are one of these teams, then you're going to know that you're going to have those additional considerations when you collaborate. But you'll be able to collaborate, which will be good. So looking at our schedule, some of the things we considered, we did some surveys actually with the agencies first. So I think, probably just all of that discovery that you have to do before you can build a schedule for a project. That was a part of it, understanding where their technical environments were. How long is it going to take us to actually, do these migrations? We got also some of that from our lessons learned with those agencies that had to go, through the emergency and through the 2010 agencies. There were some things we did not see coming, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's more that we're not going to see coming, and that was the real challenge for us. And I think often a challenge for project managers is, how do you know what you don't know, right? How can we get as much information as we can, knowing that there's still going to be unknowns out there, and so there's definitely some assumptions you make, right? And speaking of assumptions, we have a few loaned resources. Those will continue to be available through the project. And then resource challenges. We talked a lot about bringing in resources, migration. We did an RFQ. We talked about Covendis. And, really, when we looked at the bang for our buck, given the onboarding time and where we were at with the project, it didn't make a lot of sense. So we decided to just extend our timeline some and continue with the resources that we have that we're up to speed, on board, and rolling. So, but it is constraining also. Our high level view then, some of you may know, we had a legislative budget note that actually instructed EIS to be done with this work by June of 2021. It did say that if there were some agencies that hadn't been fully migrated to the enterprise environment, that we just had to report them. So as you can see, there's going to be a number of agencies over here on the right from July through December that we won't have done at that point. But we will get everybody using teams that can, and close out any of those tasks that we have with the technical cleanup on those that were in Group A right now. Group C, we'll get those done, and then Group D, that acquire and federate, will also be done. And then we've got the closeout, super exciting. So I've mentioned this a few times, but we've got to still provide the operational support. We just say that as, and like to hit that home, because it does cause for some balancing for the team. We have allowed that additional time in a migration. So each migration or onboarding, excuse me, is 13 weeks. And so we allowed that amount of time to really allow for the team to not be completely, heads down only on project work, and they could balance the operational support as well. And as well as agencies who have other things going on. I'm talking to a few agencies right now that are modernizing some of their core business systems. So it's a lot for agencies as well, and we know that. Here's that Group B, our long pole in the tent for our schedule, and so you can kind of see where we're going to be by June, and then we've got some more agencies there towards the end. And then Group C. And here's how our onboarding generally goes, just for your information. We're going to give the agencies some tasks that they can do beforehand, and if they can, and then we engage with them. We have a kickoff meeting, and we just had one today with the Commission for the Blind. Went over, kind of a slideshow, giving them all of the context, and then going through our onboarding guide and all of the tools that we have for them, gives them links to certain things. So, working obviously with their IT team and their business team to get them informed and understand the approach for the next 13 weeks. Then we have a migration. It's typically a Friday night, but there is some work that can be done over the weekend. And hopefully it takes a couple hours. If it takes more than that, it means we've kind of run into some issues. And then the week of post-migration support. So that's all I have, and it's time for questions. I think just the only other thing I wanted to put out there is if there's any questions folks have on how we're using the tools on the project, I can speak generally to that. If you have questions, I think one of our biggest challenges on this project, and in change management, we all have to deal with people at different places, right? Either their knowledge or their motivation is at different places. But with this project, we really are dealing with people in completely different places. So in this group of, project managers that I know we have on this call, we've got the full spectrum of where you're at. Some of you may, be very familiar with Teams. Some may have just heard of it. So I like to be sensitive to that, and so not going into too much detail right now on capabilities, but at some point would be happy to come back, when we're all closer to level playing field and really talk about the great benefits of teams and projects.
Well, thank you for that, Jennifer. It looks like there's a question in our chat regarding details or additional details on Group D. Perhaps one of the people that is going to be part of that acquire and federate M365 process. So any additional details or places that we'd be able to follow up to see more about what's happening with each one of those groups?
Yeah, let me just go back to that slide. So what I can say generally about Group D is there's probably not going to be too much of an end user impact with those groups, depending on where they're at, right? Because my caveat is everyone's in different places. There may be capabilities that they want to further use as they go down the road, but it's going to be dependent on that organization making those decisions, less the project telling them to do it. But really, it will be a technical conversation. We just sent out emails to all of the CIOs for those agencies saying, let's get together and start planning out the acquire and federation process, which is really just getting certain access and privileges switched around for EIS and the agency and really understanding those roles and responsibilities. So not sure if that helps. If there's something more specific you want me to dial into, let me know.
Thanks for that. I think one of the other things that we had talked about in setting up this conversation for PMUG is any of the potential value you've seen just from a project management perspective about the different kinds of tools and other things that 365 is going to enable. So if you have some thoughts about that, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about before, that really once we all get into this and have that level playing field, there's some capabilities that I think are really amazing, and I can just speak to a couple. So, for example, Planner is a tool that we use. We track all of our communications through Planner. So we and you can, it's almost like Excel. I want to almost say Excel for dummies, except it does really a lot, but it's so usable, and the way that you can sort things or the views that you can change. I can very quickly look at my communications as everything that is not published, right? Which if it's not published, that means it's still in flight. So I want to look at that, or by audience, or I can look at everything with just a click of a button by date, or who it's assigned to. And so the use of Planner has been a game changer for us. We use it for that. We use it for all of our task management. As I said, we still have our Microsoft project. And we have everything built out there, but the next level down, granularity, is managed in the Planner. And then we have a shared, and you can. It's interesting too, because it's not only how you use things. Because, for example, we have an Excel spreadsheet that we use and we have a tab for every agency, and these are the tasks that we're going to go through with every Group B agencies specifically. And we're going to go through all of these tasks with every agency. We use those to drive our conversations and our weekly meetings with the agencies, which great. All of us can do that with Excel. But the amazing thing is it's pinned at the top of our board. It's right there all the time. I go to it probably, once a day, if not more. And so it's it's the accessibility of things, you know, even if it's a regular thing that we use all the time, like Excel. We have lists that is another functionality, and you know, again, it's really like just the ability to and actually, I'm thinking now I think our communications is actually built in lists and not Planner. But regardless, both of those tools work in a way that it's really just like the next level of Excel spreadsheets, but really much more user friendly. So more powerful yet more user friendly, and that's really the great thing. And all of our tasks are, you know, as we're going through our team meetings and looking at them together, it just helps us to be so much more effective and on point, right? So I would really love at some point to come back and show everybody, and I don't know what the right timing, and I would need to bring my project managers to really show you, and probably Brittany Kinnison, because they're pretty powerful. And I think anything, you know, if you're in an agency who's going to be migrating and you want to talk to us specifically about how we can help you after migration, that would be perfect. We would be, you know, happy to do that. Yes, that's a great point. Kim said, MS Project is a great schedule management tool, but Planner is a fantastic work management tool. Exactly.
And the good news is they can work together.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the advisory committee and the different representatives who are a part of that cross-agency. As far as when the project has reached completion and there's decisions being made about what may be opened up within the Oregon tenant down the road when it comes to the different Microsoft services, how are those decisions going to be approached?
The MAC will continue. So the advisory committee will continue. That's a long-term group, essentially. I don't see us ever not needing that group. And what will happen is they'll have then a direct line to EITGC, the Enterprise IT Governance team, because we will no longer have a steering committee once the project closes. Excuse me. Well, you know, one other point, and I don't know if you have any follow-ups on that, Joe, but I just thought of the other thing that we're working on is really the program, long-term program for M365. And I think, you know, these are considerations anytime you're implementing an enterprise project or right? If this is your transition to operations, like what does that look like for you? And so there's also, you know, going to be decisions made about how that looks and how that gets supported in the ongoing way. Obviously, our team of highly skilled engineers is going to have to continue to support it, but especially post-project closure. But there's likely going to be some other folks we want to bring on. You know, we need more SharePoint expertise. And so that's definitely an area. I know licensing, managing all these licenses it's a whole nother skill set. And so we definitely have people who are managing it now, but we would really like to have dedicated resources for some of these things. So.
Okay. Looks like there was another question regarding long-term. Will there be a user group that has started around the different tools available in M365?
That's a good idea. It may be that the team has talked about that, but I will definitely take that back and see what the thoughts are. What do we have other? I mean, I know this is essentially kind of like a user group. Have any of you had experience with other user groups with like technology and kind of sharing on, you know, how people are using capabilities and whatnot? Looks like Jenny has her hand up.
I have. I just didn't know if you were polling by hands up or.
Oh, Yeah, no, I would like to hear about it. If you want to just kind of just generally let me know how it was structured, that'd be great.
Well, we started with initial surveys, and so we did surveys to give us kind of the talking points, and then from there we were able to zero in on how we wanted the focus of that user group to be, and we were able to develop that user group in terms of features and functionalities. And then people who were doing some of the additional testing and the questionable functionalities, we weren't sure if we were going to bring in or not. So some of the like you were talking about Microsoft rolling out
Right.
some questionable. And so as long as it didn't violate any security policies, the real value, if it was worth putting time, effort, and energy into developing that out. Too often, I think sometimes somebody thinks something is a great idea, you spend the time to develop it out, and then it turns out not to be. And that's what we've used user groups for in the past, to validate the usefulness of maybe some of those concepts, and then being able to roll that out across agencies.
Yeah, good. That's helpful. So it sounds like our MAC might be kind of achieving some of that right now, but that if we really wanted to open this up, I don't know. I think
it gives agencies a voice and the ability to, to have people from within their agencies kind of contact them and kind of carry some of that forward. There's some positives to it.
Yeah, exactly. And we have agency representation on the MAC. I think, kind of what sparked in my head with that suggestion was actually just a place where anyone could come, right, to share and learn, which is probably a little less structured than what you were doing, and maybe somewhere in between that and the MAC that we have now. So yeah, let me take that back, and if anyone has any other ideas, I'd love to hear them. It looks like Oscar had a question. Hi, Oscar. What steps are being taken to lifecycle plan, knowing the long length of project implementation? I feel like it's kind of a short length, but okay. And the speed at which the technology is evolving. Yeah, that's our challenge right now, is our road mapping, right? And so, and I will say we don't know at this point. So as soon as I would say we have to get through February and March and really get our feet under us on our project work, and then we can really pivot to that. But if you have any ideas or thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Yes, definitely speedy. It's unbelievably speedy. I have started, every now and then I get forwarded the seems like daily announcement from Microsoft, and it's a little stunning on what's coming. Oscar says, I'm asking on behalf of my selfish need a long-term life cycle plan in my own world, right? I know. What are we all doing in that area? We could probably all be better. And the end users could also play the role of change champion long-term. That's maybe a good kind of combo. They're that conduit to their agency. Yeah, so we could probably frame that user group in a few different ways, right? We could have assigned membership that have a responsibility to communicate out to their agencies, or it could just be a come all sharing time, and it might kind of depend on what our bandwidth is as a team to have that kind of overhead of coordinating something. So yeah, so we'll have to think about that.
There was a comment dropped in about lessons learned. I'm sure that those are being captured along the way over the life of this project. Is that going to be something that will be shared and available for the PM community at the point of closure?
Yeah, absolutely. I love lessons learned. I think it's so important. I think the real problem is we don't do anything with them once we get them. And Joe, we've talked about that in our board meetings. we have been looking for a space and a process in which we can take lessons learned so that any of you could go look at them and say, this is, and be able to find the right lessons learned, right? Because each project is not going to translate to everyone's other project, right? What are the similarities that you would need to look for to find lessons learned that would actually help you with your project later? So, definitely from an enterprise perspective, we would have those lessons learned, and we'd certainly be happy to make them available. We've already done one lessons learned after the emergency work. And we have IQMS on this project. We're, lucky and thankful for that. And so they're going to be doing regular lessons learned. And then the plan is really honestly so we're looking at Group B still here. After every migration, we will have a survey where we're going to say, what went well, what could have been better. And so that's going to be an ongoing process that we go through. How applicable that will be to anyone that's not doing M365, I don't know. I think most of it's going to be either about the way we've communicated on our team or specific technical, things that we should have done differently. So. But yeah, absolutely, we'll have those available.
There was a question regarding tutorials and videos for Planner in particular, but Jennifer, am I right in understanding that the M365 hub that's been established is going to be a centralized place for sharing a lot of the information on features and functions of each of the tool sets?
Yeah, Anne, who asked about that, should have access to that hub. So when she gets this PowerPoint, she can click on that link and see if there's tools there that will help her. And beyond that, we've been just having kind of Teams general training, like Teams 100, Teams 200, so kind of the basics, and then a little more, complicated things. But we have talked about having specific topics, so that might be a topic that we choose to do a little later down the road. Microsoft actually offers those for us, so it's really nice, but we have to be able to have a certain number of attendees. They like us to have a certain number of attendees. So Dawn, the hub link doesn't work for you because you're not in the Oregon tenant. So I appreciate you allowing me to reiterate that. So you're over here in Group D, and actually though, no, you're federated at this point, so I will have to ask why it wouldn't work for you. I'm not sure why it happened before I joined the project, but DHS OHA has been federated with the Group A Oregon environment, so perhaps there's still something else we have to do there, but I don't think so. So let me check on that. And good to see your name, Dawn. But Anne, you're in DAS, and so that definitely shouldn't be a problem for you. All right, anything else? Okay, did you have anything else you want to let folks know about PMUG
today?
What's that?
So we're planning on sharing, or have already shared, the link to the state's 365 project site. That does include the link to sign up for updates for anybody who's interested in getting ongoing content regarding where things are at in the timeline, which groups are a part of which phases of rollout, and where we are on the schedule for the year. I just wanted to thank you again, Jennifer, for coming to share this with us today. We do look forward to hopefully having you and the rest of the team back at some point down the road. It would be great to hear once things have gotten a bit more finalized and are moving towards the celebratory phase of a successful project. But we thank you again for the time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will be posting a recording of the video out on our Project Management Board website. You'll see a link in the chat shortly after close.
Great. Thanks all.
All right. Take care, all. Bye-bye.